In the heart of the community, where conversations flow as freely as the barber's scissors, a unique dialogue unfolds. Welcome to the Barbershop, a place not just for haircuts, but for honest discussion and connection across generations. Meet Cordell Davis, a passionate young voice eager to navigate the complexities of today's political landscape. He represents a generation striving for change and empowerment. And alongside him is Brother Black, aka Bill Davis, a respected educator and a bridge to the wisdom of the past. With years of experience and insight, he embodies the knowledge that shapes our future. The owner of the Hair Den is Charles Serite. Welcome to Cuts and Conversations.
Welcome to the Barbershop.
We're at the Barbershop and we're going to have a great discussion today. Come on in.
I was either comfortable or uncomfortable with it, and I just need to share, this is my view about it. So
Right.
then, as a parent, for you to reinforce the self-esteem in your child to say, listen, So when our children reach a certain age, right, and their friends are doing stuff that you don't permit at your house, right, I make it clear to my children, whatever your friends are doing outside, that's up to them. But you cannot bring that foolishness in, right? That stops at the doorstep. Right, and so in certain things, we just got to be really clear about how we operate as parents. And so, the things that we support, the things that we don't. And then, yes, we can't be with them all the time and control their behavior, but I think it's important for them to understand how we see the world, what our intentions and desires and goals are for them, and that, there's going to be things that they contradicted. And so even as black people walking down the street, and I tell my students this all the time, I'm walking down the street like I'm dressed now, nobody thinks of me as a college professor. Right? I'm just another nigga walking down the street. Right. And with my locks on, right? I'm smoking, getting high, don't wash my hair, all the stereotypes that go along with that. So there's always going to be, man, for us and for our children, the challenges we're going to face, and then how do we reinforce them not to give in to the negative. So I remember my son was in, kindergarten, first grade. And he was going to schools, integrated schools, this little white girl liked him. And the white boy said, she can't be your girlfriend because she's white, right? This is in first grade at the latest. First grade at the latest. And so my son comes home confused hearing this kind of conversation, right? Like, what was he talking about? So racism starts at an early age. Stereotypes start at an early age.
It starts in the home.
Our children need to be prepared for the fact that they're going to face some of this.
I think the thing that comes to mind when I think about it is that as an African American man and a council person versus and the first vice mayor of the city of Easton, we don't come to these meetings. So when we don't come to the meetings and we're not at the table, you don't hear. And my job is to get that information out there as best I can get it out there. But a lot of times things get swept underneath the rug because we're not a parent. I was told a long time ago by my mentor that we don't have to say a word. All we gotta do is show up. And when we show up, it gives the impression that we're engaging. But if someone from the community makes a comment or initiative, then it gives council an opportunity to look into it. Why aren't we doing it for this community? And Easton is a melting pot of so many minorities. It's like a good recipe for a good bowl of soup. But until you start extracting things from it, you're not going to get what you need. And being that person in place in a leadership position, I need to hear from my community. So it's important that we engage in our local government. And I think Barack hit it a long time ago in 2008 when he said this. Don't complain, vote.
Okay. Donald Trump's family came from Germany. His grandfather was a member of the Nazi party. He was a Nazi soldier in Germany.
Right.
Okay. When Hitler lost the war, his grandfather immigrated to the United States. They brought that white supremacy, that white superiority complex into New York, and they discriminated against. They built a housing empire, and they discriminated particularly against people of color, blacks in particular, right? Equal Employment Opportunity Commission filed suit against Donald Trump's organization, and they beat Donald Trump and his family for millions of dollars. Even after paying that, even after going through all of that, you would have thought that the Trump family would have said, wait, we need to change our mindset. But they didn't.
They did.
What he did was, another example is four black men and one Puerto Rican kid was walking through Central Park.
Oh yeah, Central Park Club.
Even after DNA evidence showed that it couldn't have been them. Trump took out an $85,000 ad, and it was the New York Times, I think it was, and said he didn't care about the DNA evidence. He wanted these 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids killed. He didn't give a doggone about their lives, their families.
Okay, so I was leading protests in Raleigh, and a group had actually taken down a Confederate monument. And so the next day, Trump has an executive order that if you take down a Confederate monument, you'll be jailed for a minimum of 10 years. It was upgraded to a felony charge. And he was tweeting away. Many of us don't even read his tweets anymore, but he was tweeting to protect the Confederacy, to protect the Confederate monument. And I'm just thinking, is this real, right? I remember when I first set foot in North Carolina, and I saw this 72-foot tall Confederate monument. I couldn't even believe my eyes.
Robert E. Lee.
Robert E. Lee. The governor said, okay, we're going to utilize this clause in the law that says if there's a danger to society, we had to take down the entire monument. So they were able to take it down. But Trump wanted to keep all of them across the country. He wanted to preserve the Confederacy. And many of us don't know that, okay, if you weren't involved in the protest, if you weren't looking at all that. But I saw the tape on Fox News when they were talking about Trump's executive order, and it was our march in North Carolina. It was the 72-foot tall monument in North Carolina that made Trump decide, okay, let's protect these Confederate monuments, and all of you will be jailed for 10 years. And even this barbershop talk we're having right now, he said if you conspire against me, and if you're working against me, and if you're hurting my campaign, when I get elected, I'm going to make sure you all go to jail.
He's talking about black men.
It's an important point here that we need to make sure that we understand. So, one of the killers of Breonna Taylor was just convicted by Christian Clark in the Justice Department. And so, while we're talking about what happened 4 years ago, the George Floyd murders and the murder of Breonna Taylor, we should understand that if Trump got back in, the Justice Department would not do the work that it's doing now. And in fact, when Vice President Harris becomes President Harris, Christian Clark may be, may be elevated to even a higher position. So we should think about those consequences. And so I'm hoping that we will be very clear about what Trump has said, what Trump has already done, and how the negative impact that it has had upon our community in the past, and what he's proposing to do in the future. And so for those of us that have not read Project 2025, for those of you who have children, who wants to eliminate the Department of Education, the Environmental Protection Agency, right? This wants to run a roughshod, not over just us. One of the things that, coming back to the point you made about the Confederacy, it was in the Civil War when rich whites were able to convince poor whites to fight to defend slavery, in which poor whites were the ones who were being victimized, right? And so rich whites have been able to manipulate poor whites for 150 years, which is the same thing that they're running now. So you look at Elon Musk and the billionaires who are supporting Trump. They're supporting Trump because they want to get this tax cut, which ultimately would be detrimental to our community, because then they're going to have a deficit. We have to cut programs like Pell Grants, Title I, all Social Security, all the different things that will be advantageous to us. So there's some connecting tissue that we need to make sure we understand. And so when I came here the first time, I talked to Charles, and Charles told me that he was from Plainfield, as Mike is from Plainfield, a few Plainfield folks in the building. Right? His mother was leaving Plainfield to try to find a better school district. What most people don't know is that New Jersey is one of the 5th most segregated states in the country. And so based on where you live determines the quality of education that your child may receive. And so when Charles' mom was moved to Phillipsburg, what she realized was, like quasi-Klan territory, decided she had to leave there to come here.
Quasi.
Right?
trying to hide it.
They ain't trying to hide it.
And so, one of the things in the Harris platform is $25,000 for first-time home buyers, right? And for families that are having children, right? My daughter's about to have a child, so my daughter potentially could be eligible for some money to help raise my grandchild in a more healthy, constructive way. There's some very tangible things. So when I hear people talking about policy, and most people vote emotionally rather than on policy, but Vice President Harris has put out some very serious policy positions that people take the time to study. Trump cannot even articulate a policy position.
What's that? What's that? What's that?
He wants to end the Affordable Care Act, right? 50 million people are receiving health care because of Affordable Care Act.
That's right.
Right? And that's where the Congressman plan came from. Harris beat his ass so bad in the debate, he punked out, didn't want to do it again. Right? I mean, so we need to be really clear on who this guy is. He is a degenerate. And the sooner that we become clear about, I call MAGA a mental illness, because that's really what it is. People really seriously voting against not only their own personal interests, but against the interests of the country. And then when we expand it out to the world, I mean, we talk a lot about what's taking place in Gaza. That is certainly a very horrible genocide. But we overlook what's happening in Sudan. We overlook what's happening in Haiti. We overlook places where our people are suffering in enormous pain.
Congo.
Right. We don't even talk about it. Right? And so it's up to us to make sure that if this fool got back in, those problems become even worse than they already are. And so it's up to us to make sure we not only look what's taking place in the country, but the impact that this fool would have outside the country. And Kamala Harris did go on a tour of different African countries. And so we have a much better chance of seeing some relief, not just within the country, but internationally if she becomes president.
I think these conversations have to continue in order to educate our young black men.
We're not combating Trump. We're combating Trumpism.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
This belief. I mean, never. And I know we're close in age. I've been around just about as long as you have.
I'm the oldest one in the room.
Never have we seen so much Republican dissidence from the party. I mean, for the last really 6 years, we've been seeing Republican after Republican, leaders of the Republican Party, former chairs of the entire Republican Party, Michael Steele, Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney. Like there's a reason behind it. It's not. It's not us. No. And they've said it's country over party.
Right.
They're not agreeing with our policies, and we hope to continue to work them and get them in there. But they had to draw a line in a stance because they see what Trump has done to the Republican Party
and the country. And what can be done for the black community and black businesses in particular. That they have put out all this money to help small businesses, just like this one, just like yours. Guess who killed the bill? Trump.
They rolled the money out. The money was for everybody, but there was a prioritization on women and minorities. And a rich white business owner in Dallas, Texas, went to a judge, and the judge said that it was unethical. So it paused all this money that was supposed to go to minority businesses, which hurt and closed a lot of businesses during COVID. I think the beauty of this country is the difference in opinions, but when we come and sit at the table and we're able to, produce legislation that benefits all. So
continue this, and that's why we have a black caucus. I walk around the entire state, and we organize to make sure that when the presidentials take place, when the city council that takes place, when there's a state rep that takes place, we make sure they're all participating and they understand the importance of the black vote. Because the reality is that if we want something done, we just can't vote. We have to hold them accountable. We have to make sure that they vote and represent us. We have to make sure that bills get passed, and we put pressure on them. If we don't do, we're wasting our time. And so the Black Caucus means that we're able to leverage the people and the power we have from, not only from the barbershop, from all over, to make sure we get the stuff that's important to us. And that's why it's important for us to be here today to talk about those things, right? Because we have to have a continual process of making sure we get those things done. So that means showing up, doing stuff you don't really want to do. It means coming to a board meeting. It means talking to your representative. It means talking to your state senator. It means understanding the importance of not just voting for the president, but also voting for the down ballot candidate. Right. Understand what an attorney general does. Understand what an auditor general does. Understand what a treasurer does. Did anybody know who's running for those roles? We got Malcolm Kenyatta, who's actually running for auditor general. We got Eugene D. Pasquale running for attorney general. We have Aaron McClellan running for treasurer. Aaron McClellan. Yeah, right. Okay. But we need to understand all those things have a role. Right. It's just not president, because when it comes down to the fixing your streets, you got to understand who owns the street. Is it the county or is it the city? Do you know that? Everybody should know those things.
Really, for the majority of my time in Penn State, I was under the Trump presidency, and I felt a lot of what I experienced was a reflection of the student body there. It was almost like Trump gave them a microphone to behave a certain way. As a black man, I didn't have much of a voice on the campus of Penn State. So I joined a fraternity at Penn State, and it was a white fraternity. It was called Beta Theta Pi fraternity. And a famous fraternity because, of course, somebody died in that house, right? And so, this was an international news story. And, the whole time I'm just thinking, I sat down with Robin Robertson, Good Morning America, and all I wanted to say was, this is a reflection of the Trump presidency. This fuel of this fire, where these young white men feel invincible, is exactly what Trump wants them to feel like.
White privilege.
White privilege, and now somebody is dead and now nobody cares. So, flash forward now, we have this bill with the help of people like our Congresswoman Susan Wild. It's called the Stop Campus Hazing Act. She's on the Education Committee. And, hundreds of years have gone by, there's been no protection for people in fraternities, right? So basically you can be lowered in these organizations, and nothing against anyone who was in fraternity, but for these freshmen, they don't really know what's going on in the world, and still when they graduate college, they still don't really know what's going on in the world. They feel like they know everything, right? But, it was only a couple weeks ago where Doug Emhoff was here. He was in Allentown, and he brought Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, and I got to speak with Secretary Cardona, and I said, Mr. Secretary, we need to pass the Stop Campus Hazing Act. We need to make our colleges a safer place for students. And then the next day, the Education Committee put out a press release. I still remember, it was September 9th, and they put out a vote for September 11th. And then it passed in the House, and I was really optimistic that President Kamala Harris was going to be able to sign the bill.
Nice and old man. There you go.
Because the Voting Rights Act was not codified into law.
That's
right.
Thank you.
And so when we think about the fact that because the Supreme Court, which I call the Supreme Con, has now gutted the Voting Rights Act, then you can come with all these voter suppression policies. And so in southern states, in Texas, in Georgia, different places around the country, you can't get people who are standing in line in 100-degree heat water to drink while they're waiting to vote, right? So as long as the opportunity for the Supreme Court to change policy that is not codified into the Constitution, then we're going to continue to face the challenge, which is all the more reason if this jackass Trump got back in, he could potentially import at least 2 more people onto the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And so not only does it impact us day to day in terms of our living circumstance, but if he gets to put more guys on the Supreme Court, we would see for decades, 40 to 50 years, right? There's one point that I think we have not stated as clear as we should. That there are people who may look like us that ain't for us. Clarence Thomas is the most significant example of a Negro that has lost his mind, right? Who's basically being bought by billionaires, right? So the stuff he's done is clearly illegal as far as taking all of this money and different things from different people who have supported him. And so that's what for me, if there was ever a catalyst. And so it took the conservatives 50 years to take down the Roe versus Wade decision, right? It's going to take us some time to be able to get some of these fools off the Supreme Court and get some people on there. If we get control of the House, the Congress, and the Senate to expand the court, then we could neuter Alito, we could neuter Clarence Thomas, we could neuter some of the people that need to be neutered, in addition to replacing some of them. So there's a significant reason why our energy should be real high.
Yes, sir.
Should be incredibly high to make sure that this food does not get back to the White House.
Now,